and a very good morning to you. And now, destination unknown. We're saying hello to Otto Herald and Manfred Pollak. Otto Herald, a young pilot with Austrian Airlines, was looking forward to Christmas, and Captain Manfred Pollak also needed a few days off from the routine of flying. They'd had a busy year, and with snow on the ground, there was a wonderful feeling in town. Vienna was happy and in a good Christmas mood. But then Vienna was thrown into a nightmare. Things had dramatically changed. It was the 22nd of December, 1975, and because of this nightmare, Otto Herald and Captain Manfred Pollak were preparing for takeoff. Their flight was unscheduled with no return leg, and going to destination unknown. And then the passengers boarded, a small group of terrorists and their hostages, and the terrorist leading the terror was Carlos, the most notorious, most feared, most dangerous, and most wanted man in the world. And the hostages were the oil ministers of OPEC, and amongst them the most powerful of all, Sheikh Yamane of Saudi Arabia. And it was just after lunch on the previous day when the story began. The annual meeting of OPEC oil ministers was nearing its end. Soon everyone would be on their way home. There was a very good feeling. The meeting had been a success. And then, without warning, it happened. The nightmare began. The meeting was stormed by Carlos and his small group of terrorists. The oil ministers were now down on the floor, with their hands on their heads. Guns speak a very clear language. And then the talking began, and there was nothing that Austria could do. In those days there were no special forces, and with one policeman already dead, the terrorist demands were agreed to in full. Life was more important than principle. And the terrorist demands included a message in French to be read out at 2 hourly intervals on the radio, meals and drinks from the Intercontinental Hotel, and a plane to take them and their hostages out of the country. But of course, a plane needs a crew. At Austrian Airlines, the call for volunteers went out. A crew was needed, and two of the many who volunteered were Otto Herald and Captain Manfred Pollak, and they were selected. And it was hard to pretend while sitting in the cockpit and waiting. This flight was to be different. There were no guarantees. Otto Herald and Captain Manfred Pollak knew they may never return. Now they were no longer thinking of Christmas. And then they were off. They had been cleared for takeoff to destination unknown. And as they took off and climbed into the cold winter sky, the world held its breath. But they needn't have worried. Everything went off okay, and their flight turned into a tour of Middle East capitals with a hostage release at each stop. And when reaching Algiers, Carlos and his gang simply disappeared into thin air. Otto Herald and Manfred Pollak were alone in their plane. The journey had ended, and before very long they were on their way home. Now, destination Vienna and Christmas. But there was one small story that Otto Herald never forgot. Because there had been no hostesses on board, it was far too dangerous. Otto Herald had volunteered to serve coffee. Coffee was all that they had, and everyone was happy. That is to say, all except one. One of the hostages, an oil minister, rudely rejected the offer of coffee and demanded a tea. Otto Herald was unable to help. The oil minister then became even angrier, and then, later, when Otto Herald went to clear up the dirties, one of the terrorists stopped him. The still none too happy and miserable minister was ordered to clear up instead. There were to be no more passenger complaints for the rest of the flight, and that was the worst thing that happened on the flight to destination unknown. And 6 months later, Captain Manfred Pollak and Otto Herald were decorated for bravery by the President of Austria, and of course both carried on flying, and Otto Herald was promoted to captain. And as everyone knows, captains can never stop flying, and after retirement both captains spent lots of their time flying their fleets of scale model planes. But no models, however impressive, can ever replace the Viscounts, DC-9s and Airbuses which the two men once flew. Life for these men was up in the sky, and they never forgot their flight to destination unknown. Two very courageous men, Captain Otto Herald and Captain Manfred Pollak. They volunteered for a Christmas-time flight with a difference, a flight where the first officer served coffee and a hostage cleared up the dirties. Destination unknown, Captain Otto Herald and Captain Manfred Pollak.